So this week's parsha is Parshas Vayeshev. Vayeshev means and he settled. So Yaakov, right, last week we had Yaakov in Haran with his complicated father-in-law and the whole story and his wives and his children and his business and all of that. He leaves because neither him nor his wives want to be there anymore. Sorry, that's 2 weeks ago. Then last week we have him heading back and he meets Esav and he's scared and he sends his gifts and his messages to Esav, etc. Now finally, Vayeshev Yaakov, and Yaakov settled. So it seems like now it's just going to be peaceful, right? Funny joke. This week's parsha has all the action, all the drama anyone could ever ask for. There's literally a Broadway musical about this week's parsha because it is just a tea festival. So we have Yoseph and his brothers, and there's tension between Yoseph and his brothers. Yoseph is this favorite, and he clearly gets treated as a favorite by his father. And everybody's aware of that. There's no denying it. All of his brothers are aware of it. His father makes him this special coat that's an expression of how much he loves him, how important he is to him. Right? Yoseph was the child who made Yaakov's favorite wife and the one who he really wanted to marry in the first place before he got scammed by his father-in-law into marrying her sister. Yaakov wanted to marry Rachel. This was the woman he wanted to marry and build a family with initially. Yoseph was the son that made Rachel into a mother. He had a very special place in Yaakov's heart. And so what happens? He's younger than all of his brothers, except Binyamin. He's clearly favored. What does that produce? Very simple and obvious. It produces jealousy. So, right, we have this story. And Yoseph was, in addition to being younger and favored and spoiled, he was also this, he was this pretty boy. He liked to stand in front of the mirror and do his hair and take care of the way he looked. And then on top of all of that, so on top of all of the things that already were sources of tension between him and his brothers, some of them perhaps he had more of a hand in contributing to actively than others. He has this dream. And in this dream, him and his brothers are all out in the field and they're gathering stalks of grain and bundling and gathering them up into bundles. And then in the dream, all of the bundles that his brothers had gathered stood up, and his bundle stood up, and all of their bundles bowed to his bundle. So, of course, a brother who already is bullied by his brothers, and already his brothers don't like him, his brothers have a lot of resentment towards him and jealousy, and they bully him. When he has a dream that depicts all of his brothers' bundles bowing down to his, obviously he's going to keep it to himself, right? No, he's not. He goes and he tells them, hey guys, guess what? I had a dream. We were in the field gathering stalks of grain, and all of your stalks of grain stood up, and mine stood up, and all of yours bowed to mine. Excellent idea. That's definitely going to help your relationship. And then Yosef has another dream. And in this dream, there are these 11 stars and the sun and the moon, and they're all bowing to him. So now, not only is there this metaphor of his brothers bowing to him, now there's a metaphor, the sun and the moon, his parents also bowing to him. And so what's he going to do? Obviously, he's going to go and tell his brothers and make them even more resentful. And long story short, his brothers are planning to kill him. Then we have one brother who's like, no, let's not do that. And he negotiates for them. Instead of killing him, let's sell him. They sell him off as a slave. Now, what are they going to come back and tell their father about his favorite son that has just gone missing? So they take his coat that Yaakov had made for him and they kill an animal and they drench it in blood and bring it back as this sign that Yosef somehow must have gotten killed by an animal or something. They bring in the coat. Look, Yosef's coat is full of blood. Yaakov is completely devastated. His favorite son is dead as far as he knows. Meanwhile, Yosef is sold as a slave and is sold off and he ends up in Egypt. And in Egypt, Yosef was, by the way, he didn't just see himself as this, pretty boy and like to take care of his appearance. He was a very charismatic person. He was very likable to everyone except his brothers who were jealous. So he lands up in Egypt. He is sold off to Potiphar, who's like this, basically Potiphar, who Srispari, he has a very high position of authority and power under Pare, under Pharaoh. And Yosef is a slave, and because Yosef is, he's charismatic, he's capable, he was a man of many gifts, and so pretty soon he ended up basically running Potiphar's household, running Potiphar's entire business, his estate, everything. Yosef was managing everything for Potiphar. Potiphar's wife took a liking to Yosef, a little bit too much. She tried to seduce him. He rejected her, and she basically started screaming and accusing him of rape. Of attempted rape. Yosef was put in prison. In prison, the same cycle again. Yosef's in prison. He's charismatic. He's capable. Pretty soon, the guards start taking a liking to him, and he earns himself more and more liberties, and pretty soon he ends up more or less running the prison. He was an inmate officially, but he kind of managed a lot of what was happening in the prison. And then he ends up meeting one morning seeing Paro's baker and his Saramashkim, his butler. They're both in prison and they both have these long faces, and he asks them what's going on, and they both tell him we had these strange dreams and we can't figure out what they mean, and they tell him his dreams, and he interprets the dreams for them, and he tells the baker, your dream basically means that Paro is going to kill you, and he tells the butler that your dream means that Paro is going to reinstate you and going to take you out of prison and give you back your job. So, and his interpretations of their dreams were correct. So the baker gets killed, the butler gets reinstated to his position, and Yosef tells the butler, do me a favor, when you're out of prison and you're reinstated to your position, can you just put in a good word for me to Pare to, remind him that I'm here and maybe recommend that he let me out? That's this week's Parsha in a nutshell. You could see why Broadway chose to make a musical about this week's Parsha. So we're going to zoom in this week and focus on Yosef's dreams. And to try to see what are the lessons for us. Remember, this is Torah. Torah means instruction. If the Torah tells us about Yosef's dreams, there is instruction for us, all of us, every one of us here today and every day, in the past and in the future. There is a lesson for every person in every time and in every place in these dreams. Right? And honestly, the dreams make for a good story. They make for good drama. But why 2 dreams? One dream would have been enough to introduce this idea and to bring that extra layer of drama into the story. One dream would have done that as effectively as 2 dreams. Now, when it comes to Pare, in next week's Torah portion, it opens up with Pare having these two dreams, and he can't interpret the dreams. And then that's how, after a long wait, then the butler remembers 2 years later, oh, there was this guy in prison, he interpreted the dreams and he got the interpretations correct, and then they take Yosef out of prison to interpret Pare's dreams. Pare had two dreams that give the same message. They were two metaphors for the same message. But we know exactly why he had two. And Yosef tells him in his interpretation of the dreams, he says the reason the dream was repeated and you had two variations of the same dream was to emphasize the urgency of the message. This is coming ASAP. You better get on this. So there we understand very clearly why there were two dreams for the same message. But we don't have any indication this week of why we have two dreams. Both dreams are the same message. Okay, in the second dream, it's not just the 11 brothers, it's two parents also. Okay, so we could have had the second dream and not the first dream. But why two specifically? Why do we need to have two different, why did Yosef need to have two different variations of the dream? And the Torah tells us about the two variations of the dream and tells us about many of the details of the two variations of the dream. How is this Torah, how is this Horah? What's the instruction that it's giving us? And there are many pieces here, each of which is really a huge lesson that can genuinely, and I know I say this a lot in these classes, but it really genuinely can change the trajectory and the experience of a person's life. So let's start with number one. Why two dreams? So let's say, let's draw a graph, right? Because why not? So we have a y-axis here, and it's whatever it is. It doesn't really matter what it is. And we have an x-axis here. Yeah, okay, so we have a graph. That's a data point on the graph. What do we know about that? Not much. Now, if I would tell you I have a scale here, and the scale, whatever it is, and at this point the value on the y-axis is 3,000. What does that tell you? Still not much. Like, what's the context? 3,000 what? Is it 3,000 years? Is it 3,000 seconds? Is it 3,000 pennies? Is it 3,000 $1 million? Like 3,000 what? 3,000 doesn't mean much of anything. It doesn't tell us much. We literally know nothing except that that point is there, and what does that tell us? Now, with or without that, 3,000 there, it doesn't really matter. What do we know now? We have two data points.
That's less than 3,000.
And if, let's say that this isn't here, we don't know necessarily what the context is per se, but we know that from here to here there is a change. There is an increase in whatever is on the y value. As we move along the x-axis, the value on the y-axis increases. There is an upward trend. Right? We have a direction of movement here. There's a very big difference between before. Right? And you know what? Let's do this again. It's not just about the context and what the units are and what the numbers are. It's also like, is this point lying between another point here and here and here and here? Or is it maybe there's one here and here and here and here? Or maybe it's going in the opposite direction? Right? Or maybe we have something a bit more parabolic. Like, there are so many different shapes and directions of movement that this could be a part of. And maybe it's not a part of something. Maybe there is no direction of movement. Maybe it's just one point. At this point on the x-axis, the value is that point on the y-axis, and that's one data point, and that's all there is. Like, who knows what this actually means? It doesn't tell us much of anything. Right? So in math, there are what's called scalar and vector units, right? So you could have on a graph, let's say, it wouldn't look like an X, it would look like a point. You could have a point on a graph somewhere. Now that represents a scalar value, which is just a number. Call it 3,000. You could have a vector, same point on the graph, with a little arrow like that shows you it's here. This is where it is, but its direction of movement is in that direction. Right now it's here, but that's the direction of movement, right? It's a vector. You have a lot more context now because you know not just where it is at one point in time or at one value on the x-axis, but you know what's the trend. And it's a very big difference. If I tell you someone just squatted 10 pounds, someone squatted with 10 pounds on their back, is that a good achievement? It's like, well, I don't know. Are they like a world record holder in powerlifting? It's like that person could squat hundreds of pounds. It's not an achievement. They wouldn't even know whether there's 10 pounds on their back or 0 because it would feel the same to them. It's not an achievement. If I tell you it's a 3-year-old kid, it's like, okay. What about if it's someone who was paraplegic and in a wheelchair for the last 10 years and they just got out of a wheelchair and now they're squatting 10 pounds? It's like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. Who could even imagine that could happen? Right, so squatting 10 pounds, is it an achievement? Well, what's the context? What's the direction of movement? Is this a person who was a world champion in powerlifting, and then they stopped doing exercise and they sat on the couch watching Netflix and eating potato chips and ice cream for the past 10 years, and now all they're able to do is squat 10 pounds, even though they used to do hundreds of pounds? It's like, yeah, that 10 pounds isn't a great achievement for that person, at least in the broader context of their whole life trajectory, right? That value is way down here relative to before when they were up here somewhere. Right? So just the number, just the value, without the context, is who knows what that means. Once we have a direction of movement, now we have a whole different picture. And this is not just some, fluffy, nice thing that, oh, it's the direction of movement, the trajectory that counts, that's what matters. Because that is true and it is a beautiful thing, but it's not just something that we say to make people feel better, and also conceptually it's also valid, and philosophically it's like, this is very real, this concept, right? And to illustrate now, this is real. Biology doesn't lie. Physiology doesn't do things to make people feel better about themselves. There's no fluff in physiology. It is what it is. It's black and white, it's technical, it's mechanical, and it just follows the rules. When a person goes for a really long, hard run, let's say, right? What happens after a good, long run? A person really pushes themselves in exercise. We get a rush of endorphins, and we can feel euphoric. It can feel amazing. People can get addicted to intense exercise literally just for the euphoria they get at the end. Right? Endorphins, endorphin is endogenous morphine. Endorphins are literally opiates that our body creates, and people take opiates for a reason. Endorphins feel really good. Now, if we look at the biological or physiological function of endorphins, the biological function or purpose of endorphins is to reward us for pushing ourselves and working really hard, because it's very good for us to do that. And so Hashem built into our physiology a natural reward that motivates us. We do it, it feels amazing. Let me do more of that. It feels so good. Let me do more of that. It feels amazing. Right? And we have similar things with serotonin and with dopamine. Putting in effort, working on a project, working on something that we believe in, gives us dopamine, which makes us feel a sense of rewardedness, right? And there are behaviors that increase maybe our serotonin, which makes us feel a sense of maybe more happiness rather than rewardedness. Movement, exercise, community, purpose, all of these things give us endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. These molecules are there. A huge part of what they do is they motivate us to do more. How long or hard does a person have to run to get a dump of endorphins and feel that rush, feel that euphoria? It depends, right? The endorphin rush, that endorphin dump and the euphoria that a person feels, they will get it when they are pushing the boundaries of their ability. And on day one, when a person starts exercising, starts running for the first time, when they push the limits of their ability at that time, they are going to get that euphoria, they are going to get that endorphin rush. If they continue running every single day for months, for years, after 10 years of running every single day, if they run the same amount that they did on that first day, their heart rate's probably not even going to go up. They're definitely not going to get an endorphin dump. They're definitely not going to get a euphoria and that runner's high. Now, the amount, the time, the distance, whatever it is that they have to run in order to get that same hit of endorphins and that same euphoria that they got that first time is determined by how hard they are pushing themselves. If they push their limits as hard today as they push their limits then, they're going to get the same thing. It's not about how the distance doesn't determine it. It's how hard are they pushing themselves. Why? Because the endorphins are not there to make us run a certain amount. The endorphins are there to motivate us to work hard and push the boundaries and make progress. And as we make progress, the endorphins are going to stay on the perimeter of our new capacity to push us to continue making progress. They don't care. Our physiology isn't designed to reward us when we get to a certain level of strength, when we get to a certain speed, a certain distance. They're there to reward us when we are making progress, when we're pushing the boundaries of our capacity. It doesn't matter how much it is. What matters is, are we moving forward? Are we pushing the limits and producing growth? When we push the limits, our bodies adapt and our capacity increases. Right? Lifting weights doesn't make muscles bigger. Lifting weights, especially, if a person's pushing their limits, ideally in a way that it's safe and not going right up to the limit where they're much more likely to hurt themselves, but a person's pushing themselves in the gym, the muscles are not getting bigger, stronger, etc. while they're lifting the weights. After a good hard workout where you really push yourself, you're going to feel very weak. The capacity of your muscles right now is less. They're drained, they're exhausted. But you just gave your body a message that says, oh, there is work that's coming up in my life that is pushing the limits of my capacity. I should increase my capacity. That's the message we're sending our physiology. And so our body responds. And when does muscle growth happen? Mostly when we sleep. One of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're exercising, whether it's, trying to build muscle, whether it's trying to build strength, whether it's trying to build stamina, whether it's trying to become more fit, is pushing in exercise and thinking that is what causes the improvement. That's not what causes the improvement. That's the stimulus that triggers the body to improve. But the improvement happens primarily when we're resting, right? And elite athletes know one of their most important priorities. It's an elite athlete, and this is across all sports. It's in track, it's in field, it's in combat sports. Elite athletes know that one of their most important responsibilities is to get a good night's sleep. And there are elite athletes who you would think that they're training. They might be sleeping 10 hours a night because they push their body so hard, but at the end of the day, the growth happens when you sleep. The exercise is the stimulus. And so because exercise stimulates adaptation, improvement in health, our bodies have a built-in reward that rewards us for pushing ourselves, for working hard, because working hard will stimulate the body to improve, to grow. It's a little bit meta, but that's the way it works. This is Hashem's design. Right? So we see here this idea that what matters is not just where you are. What matters is the trajectory is a very real thing, and it's built into physiology. And this is why Yosef had two dreams, and Hashem chose to give Yosef two dreams, and for the Torah to tell us about the two dreams. Because there's something very important here that you cannot ever get from one data point. Right? One data point just tells you what it is. When you have two data points, now you have a direction of movement. Yosef's first dream was him and his brothers working in the field. Yosef's second dream was the sun and the stars in the sky. First dream on the ground, second dream in the sky. The ground and the sky, the ground and the sky are equally physical things, material, but they are metaphors for something else. Now, the word heaven or heavens, right? Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim es haaretz, the first verse of the written Torah. In the beginning of the creation of the heavens and the earth. What is the shamayim literally talking about? It's talking about the sky, like the physical sky outside. The sky and the ground. If we could, and I'm not saying that I have seen this data, I haven't, but I am very confident that if we could harvest data from Siri and Alexa and whoever the Google, whatever the Google one is, right, because they're always listening. They're listening to everything all the time. How does Alexa know when you say, hey Alexa? How does Siri know when you say, hey Siri? Because she's been listening the whole time waiting to hear you say it, which means that she heard everything else you said as well. So they're listening and hearing everything. If we could collect all the data of all the things that everyone around the world says, and then search for the word heaven or heavens, if we had to predict, do you think that the word heaven or heavens is used more frequently to refer to the physical sky outside or more frequently to refer to spirituality, divinity, godliness? Which one do you think is more frequent? Sorry? The physical one? You think that people use the word heaven to talk about the sky more? Right, right. Yes, correct. But that's why I started with shamayim, heaven, because heaven is shamayim, it's literally the sky. But when people use the word heaven, they went to heaven. When someone says so-and-so went to heaven, usually to a kid, they don't mean they went in a plane up into the clouds, right? They mean they're not here anymore, physically. Why? Now, it's so intuitive. No one ever had to explain to anyone why heaven, which really means sky, is a metaphor for spirituality, to the extent that we use it as if that's the actual definition of the word. That's how strong the metaphor is. And it's very simple. The ground, if someone trips over and hits their face on the ground, they're going to know about it. Anyone who sees them for the next 3 weeks is going to know about it, right? The ground is hard, it's tangible. You hit the ground, you know. You step on the ground, you know. The sky, it's physical, but it's much less tangible. You can fly straight through the sky, and depending on the air pressure, if there's no turbulence, you can fly right through the sky and never know that you did. Also for us, at least here on the ground is very close. We all relate to the ground, we understand the ground, we see it, we're very well aware of the ground all the time. Maybe not necessarily consciously, but every step we take, our body is processing, our brain is processing thousands of pieces of data about the ground, about the pressure, about the angle the ground is on, right? Our bodies are balancing it. If you take a kid who's just learning to walk and you get them to walk outside, or somewhere outdoors that's unpaved, they're going to be really wobbly and all over the place. The reason that for us, we could walk there and we're not wobbly and all over the place is because our brains have learned that. Our brains have a much more highly developed algorithm. They take in all the data. It measures the angles that our feet are landing and how much pressure there is and what the texture of the ground is, and all of those things are being calculated by our brains like 1,000,000 times a second, and that's why we could walk. We don't notice it consciously, but it's happening. Our bodies are in touch with the ground and perceiving the ground all the time. The sky is distant. We don't feel the sky. We don't almost ever. We could go through most of our lives without ever thinking about the sky. It's distant, it's much less tangible. So for this reason, Shamayim and Aretz, sky and ground, heaven and earth, are metaphors for spiritual and physical, or let's say the tangible, the physical and non-physical. So Yosef's first dream is about on the ground. Yosef's first dream is the tangible, the material, the physical. His second dream, same image, same message, more or less, but it's in the sky. It's in the heavens. It's spiritual. And Hashem wanted Yosef to have two dreams for this reason. And not just that, but to make sure that we know about it. To tell us he had two dreams, and these are the two dreams that he had, and in this order, because now we have a direction of movement. We know that the direction, the trajectory for us, for someone who has a purpose, whose life has a purpose, which is to fulfill our design, to fulfill the purpose for which we were created, to bring meaning into our lives, into our bodies, into our environments, into the world. The way that we do that, or another way of looking at it is, if we are doing that, one thing that's true is that we are on an upward trajectory from more material to more spiritual. And if we are, let's say that the 2 points, right, are over here at the beginning, starting down right here, and at the end, let's say it hypothetically at least all the way up there. If someone is up to here, but we know that it's a vector and the direction of their movement is like that, and someone else is up to here, and they have the same direction of movement, they're both equally on track. One of them is a few steps ahead, okay. I mean, in the most simple, obvious example, maybe this person's just been at it for longer, so they're further along the path, but they're both exactly equally on track. The thing that matters, the number one metric of a meaningful life, of a fulfilled life, of a life that is being lived in a way that fulfills its purpose, is, are you on this trajectory of going from the ground towards the sky? That's the thing that matters. And wherever we are along that path it's not completely irrelevant. There are a lot of ways in which it's relevant, but as far as are we doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing the way that we're supposed to be doing it? The answer to that cannot be determined by where you are on the graph. The answer to that cannot be determined anymore by if someone's here, or here, or here, or here. We don't know, because we don't know what the context is. But if the trajectory of movement is in that direction, then that is an indication that they're on the right track and that they're living their life the way that they're supposed to. And this is why Yosef has two dreams. The two dreams tell us that what matters is not where you are. If what matters is where you are, have one dream. It tells you where you are, and that's it. Have one dream about the sky and tell us, oh, you're supposed to be spiritual. That's not what happened. The message was transmitted through two dreams that create a direction of movement from the material and the physical towards the heavenly, towards the spiritual. That's the indication of a purposeful life. The trajectory, the direction of movement. The same way that a person who's running for the first time might get a dump of endorphins, after 10 minutes of kind of barely jogging, and someone else is going to have to, run 30 miles at like an insane pace just to get a tiny little taste of endorphins. Why? Because both of those people are pushing the limits of their capacity to the same degree. Or let's put that differently, both of those people at that point are starting to move the needle and push their trajectory upwards and push their body in a direction of growth, of development, of improvement. That's when the endorphins come. Not when you hit a certain distance or a certain pace. When you are now growing, developing, making progress. That's when the endorphins come. If that happens after 10 minutes, you'll get endorphins after 10 minutes. If it takes 4 hours, that's when you'll get them. If it takes 100 feet, then that's when you'll get them. If it takes 30 miles, then that's when you'll get them. Because the endorphins are a response to progress and growth, not to an amount or a number. And that's the message here. If the direction of movement in your personal life, in your relationship with Hashem, in your relationship with the world, with Torah and mitzvahs, in the context of Torah and mitzvahs at least, if the direction in which you are moving is from the field, from the ground, towards the sky, we're good. And if someone's over here and they're moving up, and someone's over here and they're moving up, both good. That's the message here. And maybe, one of a way that I illustrated it before, let's say with a 10-pound squat, was if this person is, a 3-year-old child versus a world-class athlete versus someone who was in a wheelchair 2 weeks ago, it's very different. And then the last example I gave was, and I want to go back to this now. I didn't appreciate the importance of this metaphor before, but I want to zero in on this now, right? The last example or illustration that I gave was of a former world champion who spent 10 years on the couch watching Netflix, eating ice cream and potato chips, and now can hardly lift 10 pounds. If that person wants to start making progress now and wants to start feeling that rush and feeling that euphoria, do they have to push themselves to the limit that they were at 10 years ago when they broke the world record? No. They need to do it for where they are now. Now, on one hand, is it true that hypothetically this person had everything they needed to? Well, honestly, probably not, because if they had everything they needed to continue on that trajectory, they probably would have. Right? But let's not get that complex. Let's not get that subtle and nuanced. Let's just say this person was already a world champion. And let's say that, and again, I personally believe that this is almost never the case, but let's say that it's entirely their fault, that they just decided they're going to, let it all go and sit on the couch, even though there's no need to and they don't have to, and they're just going to do it anyways, and they're going to let it all slide. And let's say it is hypothetically, quote unquote, their fault. And as far as, purpose and meaning, etc., growth, development go, they should not be where they are now. And let's say hypothetically even that it's their fault that they are where they are now. The bottom line is right now in this point in time, if they start pushing the limits, they're going to get that endorphin rush relative to where they are now, because right now, the right thing for them to do is to start growing right here, right now. And the fact that it's, let's say, quote unquote, their fault that they're here, doesn't take away from the fact that if they do what they're supposed to do now, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing now. And it's so easy for us to lose that and to, yeah, I know it's all about the direction of movement, but I could have not been here and it's my fault. First of all, I believe that it's very rarely the case that statement is accurate and true. That it's actually the person's fault, at least in that simple of a way. But even if it is, okay, and right now, you are in this moment in time. What happened, it's in the past. Let's say it's your fault and you're responsible. Okay, that is what it is. Also, right here, you're now. Right now, you are here, sorry. And if right now you are here, then right now, the right thing for you to do in this moment is to do what you can do for where you are. And let's take that one step further. Do you think Hashem makes mistakes? No, Hashem doesn't make mistakes. Do you think that you could have been here if Hashem chose for you to not be here? No. So the fact that you are here cannot, now it's complex. This is a very big and complex conversation and idea, but briefly, if for me to be here right now was outside of Hashem's plan, none of us can make something happen if it's outside of Hashem's plan. It's like, sorry, that would be idolatry to believe that we could. So if a person is here now, then for them to be here now is not outside Hashem's plan. Could it be that they had a responsibility for things to be different? Yes. And could it be that they'll be accountable for that? Yes. But that goes together with the fact that if they're here now, it cannot possibly be that it's outside of Hashem's plan. So if this is not outside of Hashem's plan, for this person to be here is at least one of the options that was built into Hashem's plan at a minimum. Right? If we start thinking, oh no, I messed everything up for Hashem, I'm such a bad person, I ruined Hashem's plan, it's like, whoa, get over yourself. Like, let's not start worshipping ourselves here. And obviously that's not the right way to speak to someone in that situation, but just to illustrate the point, it's like that's borderline idolatry. It's like, it's not our job to start saying, oh, I messed up Hashem's plan. It's like, relax. Can I feel a sense of responsibility for what happened in the past? Yes. And can I have accountability for that? Yes. But the moment it becomes, oh, I messed up Hashem's whole plan, oh, woe is me, it's like, is that contributing towards an upward trajectory in this moment? No, it will not do that ever, period. Which means that's not coming from the right place inside of us. That's coming from that place that wants to make sure that we continue on the downward trajectory, deeper into the couch and deeper into the bottom of the bag of chips and the tub of ice cream. The true and correct perspective is always the one that leads towards the upward trajectory from Yosef's first dream towards Yosef's second dream. And if it's quote unquote our fault and our responsibility that we are where we are and we could have been somewhere better, okay, but right now we're here. Right now, any point we are where we are on the graph, if we have the option of choosing the direction of movement of this vector, we know that it's here. We can't change the number. We can't change the value of the point, but we can change the vector. We can change the direction of movement and make it either going up or going down. That's a pretty big deal because that means tomorrow or in a month, are we going to be here or are we going to be here? And the fact that right now, let's say that right now, we're here, and we feel like really we should have been here and it's our fault. Maybe. But let's not forget about Hashem. Let's not forget that Hashem has plans, and if this was outside of Hashem's broader plan, it couldn't have happened. And maybe for some reason, right, not every decision that we feel like we made is true agency, right? The idea of true agency, of us making a decision that's truly independent of influence and of Hashem, of anything, is very, very complex. And if you really get into it in high resolution, true agency, and the term that the Rebbe uses for this is bechira amitis, is not very common. Most of the decisions we make, right? When a person decides they choose chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream, it wasn't genuine agency. They have a stronger desire for chocolate ice cream than vanilla ice cream because it's their preference. And that drove the decision. It wasn't actual agency. It was a program running inside of them that had already chosen that for them. Sometimes we end up in a place in life and we feel like it's our fault, but maybe there was a purpose and a reason why we had to end up here, and that was destiny, and that was the journey that Hashem had planned. It's not our job to now, again, this gets into something that has a lot of complexity. The balance between healthy responsibility, but not being, not shaming ourselves and being critical in a way that's not constructive. But ultimately, if we're here now, Hashem doesn't make mistakes. So right here, what matters? If what matters is where we are, Yosef would have had one dream. The dream would have said heaven. You're supposed to be in heaven. Get to heaven, period. But he didn't. He had two dreams. And which dream came first? The first one was the ground. We are supposed to start off on the ground. That's the design. And then what happened? How did Joseph's first dream open up? We were out in the fields working. They were working hard. They were gathering crops. It's hard work. And this is another signal here in these dreams. If you want to be in this trajectory where you're going from the worldly, from the material and the tangible towards the spiritual, it starts with work. It takes effort. This will not happen on its own, period. Right? When you think about the word work, in physics, the word work in physics means something a little different to what people usually mean when we use the word work, right? In the context of physics, work is a technical term, and what it refers to is an output that was produced, right? If this moved from here to here, the work is the change in location, the movement, etc. When we say work, generally what we refer to is, oh, I did work, I put in effort, I picked it up, I moved it from here to there. Now, they go hand in hand. If you want work to happen, if you want output to happen, it doesn't happen on its own. Nothing just changes unless there's an input that makes it, that causes it to change. If we want work to happen, we need to do work. If we want to go from here to there, or if we want to go, let me put that more carefully, more precisely, if we want to be moving in that direction, it takes work, because we do start out here. And if you want to move in that direction, you've got to work. Where were they working? It doesn't say they were working somewhere very far from the sky and aiming towards the sky. It's very blunt. On the ground, in the field, hands in the mud. That's where the work starts. It's very common also and very easy to get caught up in this, yeah, I should be beyond all of that, basic human nature stuff. I should be like struggling with more spiritual things. And it's like, no. If you want to get from here to there, it starts with work, and it starts with work in the field on the ground. Picking up stalks of wheat that are on the ground in the dirt. Getting your hands in the dirt. This is the work. You want to know what's the work that's going to take you from here? Get you on that direction of movement, that trajectory, that upwards trajectory towards the sky. The work that's going to get you there is putting your hands in the dirt. Is that work in the physical body, doing what we need to do in a very material, tangible, physical, human, animal way. Working on that. And if we, get caught up in whether it's pride or it's just distortion of perspectives and not understanding how things work, etc., and we feel like, I shouldn't have to work in that, I want to work on something higher, you're never going to leave the ground if you're not doing the work that needs to be done there. There's nothing wrong with that. This is the design, this is the plan, this is the whole point. And this is also why these two dreams came together for the same message. It wasn't two dreams, and then the first dream was the first part of the message, was a message about the beginning of the journey, and then the dream of the heaven was a dream about the later part of the journey. No. Same exact moment in time, same exact event, had two dreams, two metaphors for it. One metaphor was the ground, and one metaphor was the sky, the heavens. And that's because the two are two parts of the same one thing. The worldly parts of our life and experience, the bodily parts, the physical, material, tangible, human, animal parts, are equally a real, genuine, true part of the same exact thing as the spiritual, heavenly, divine parts, the body and the soul. Same exact moment in time is depicted in one dream of the field, out in the field, doing the work in the mud, and a dream up in the sky with the stars and the sun and the moon. Because they are the same thing. That doesn't mean that physical equals spiritual and spiritual equals physical, obviously. But ultimately, there is one thing, and they are both equally a part of it. And that is our purpose here, our life here. Our life here is a life that we live as a combination of a physical body and a non-physical life force, a non-physical soul. And our journey and purpose here is to be involved in the physical world, literally touching things, interacting with physical objects, with physical people in the physical world in a way that is pragmatic and practical and makes sense naturally, and doing all of that with the spirit of Torah, according to the way Torah tells us to do it. And in doing that, our physical actions are spiritual actions. But without the physical actions, the spiritual cannot be channeled into the world. It's not either or. It's both and. It's two parts of the same thing. The dream of the field was a metaphor for the exact same thing as the dream of the sky, because it is the same thing. Are they two parts of the same thing? Yes, but they're equally the same one thing. And so it's another one of these things that's easy to do is to feel like, as we become more spiritually aware and attuned and motivated and oriented, to feel like, oh, that's just physical, that's just material, I'm going to move away from that. And Yosef's dream is telling us, no. It's the sky and the ground together. Neither of them is more or less a metaphor for the same exact event than the other. Both. And the same way that if we just have the physical without the spiritual, we're missing the whole point. If we just have the spiritual without the physical, we're also missing the whole point. It's just we're missing the other half. So we have these two dreams telling us they're both part of the same thing. Neither one is more real or more valuable or more important in terms of the picture. The bigger picture is that we are here to live in the world and to do the work that we need to do and get our hands dirty in the mud when that's what needs to be done. And that is the work that is going to allow us to make an upward trajectory towards the sky. And the ground and the sky are just two parts of the exact same thing. It's all a part of why we're here and of a purposeful life that is illustrated by the fact that we're on an upwards trajectory moving from the ground towards the sky. Have a good week. Any questions?